right, today our goal is I can calculate unit rate and find missing information within proportions. One thing that I find that has some use compared to some of the things that we do in math class has to do with unit rate and proportions. And the reason being is I use them in my real life as well. So I'm thinking that probably you would as well. So ratio, rate, and proportion is the title today. Now, first of all, what exactly is unit rate? You've probably seen it before and didn't realize that that's what it was. So what it is it's a comparison of a quantity of one item to one unit to another. So examples of unit rate include the following. Okay, so 100 kilometers per 1 hour, number of calories per 1 cup, 30 rotations per 1 minute. Okay, and every time I said per, if you notice, I'm talking about that slash. Now that slash translates into per, and in mathematics, it translates into dividing. And often what you'll see when you go into a grocery store, and if you look at the little tabs just underneath the product, it will tell you a unit rate. And that way consumers then can compare the best price. All right. Also, if you're buying a car, you can actually check its fuel consumption. And in many cases, it's kilometers per liter that they're looking at there. Usually 100 kilometers is what they're looking at and how many liters it takes to go that far. So what we're looking at is a general equation, and that general equation is the item of interest. Okay, in this case it's kilometers, here it's calories or rotations per divided by the item being compared. Now the item being compared is always one. As I said, 1 hour, 1 cup, 1 minute. Okay, so this is really important when we're talking about a unit rate. So let's take a look at the type of examples that you would be expected to do, types of questions. Okay, so first of all, it says, determine the unit rate of the following. So the first question, it costs $1.50 for 20 pencils. So what am I really interested in there? Really what I'm interested in is how much for one pencil. How much is it going to cost me for one pencil? So the items that I'm interested in then are going to be, the item of interest is in this case going to be the dollar for one pencil. Okay, so I want to know how much one pencil is, the dollar amount for that. So it's actually quite easy. You take the dollar amount, which is $1.50, over 20 pencils. Okay, and all it is now is a dividing question. So we literally bring up our calculator and we do $1.50 divided by 20, and we end up with 0.075. Now that is a dollar amount. Okay, notice I kept, even though it's part of a penny, I kept the 5, so 0.07 or 0.08 per pencil. Okay, so when we're comparing especially large packages and I want to know which is the best deal, I sometimes keep more than the penny. I go a little bit further as far as that goes. Okay, the next question. A plane travels 1,200 kilometers in 3 hours. So it makes sense that what I'm after here is I'm interested in how many kilometers can I go for 1 hour. So what I'm looking at again, when I'm looking at my item of interest, I'm comparing kilometers to 1 hour. Same kind of thing, I take my 1200 and I put it over the 3 hours, do my dividing, and that you should do in your head. 3 goes into 12 4 times, and we have 2 zeros. So we end up with 400 kilometers per 1 hour. Now the last question, again, is Kylie makes $390 per 40 hours. So what do you think we're interested in here? Well, I want to know how much does she make for 1 hour? That makes sense. So what I'm comparing here is the dollar amount per 1 hour. So 390 divided by 40, and we would find out that she would make $9.75 per hour. Okay, so those are unit rate type questions. Now, the next thing we're going to look at has to do with ratio and proportion. Now, a ratio is just a comparison between two or more quantities where the units do not have to be the same. So the units don't have to be the same here. And it's often, you can write it in more than one way. And you've seen this before as well. You've done this in elementary school, you know, 1/3, so it's 1 to 3. Sometimes the 1 to 3 can be written in English. It can be written as a fraction, or it can be written with a colon between the two numbers in the ratio. Okay, now ratio can have more than two items being compared. If you notice, it says between two or more quantities, so sometimes there are more than two. If there are more than two, obviously we wouldn't be able to write it in a fractional form. Now, a proportion has to do when two ratios are put together and they're supposed to be equal. And this is something, as I said, that I use in real life. I'm doing it especially if I'm in the barn and I'm mixing feed and I follow the directions and it tells me that what the ratio is to be, and I'm making a larger portion or I'm mixing different things together. So then I would use a proportion when I'm solving. So example would be like 1 to 2, I know is equal to 2 to 4. All right, so let's take a look at the types of examples here. Okay, so determine the unknown values. So what I have here is a proportion because I have two ratios, even though I'm missing some information, are equal to each other. So what I'm after here is I want to find this unknown value. So it's very similar to what we were doing before. I mean, I could do it as a fractional form. Okay, so I could do 3 to 5 equals something over 25. So I could do that as well. However, in many cases, I'm going to have more than two ratios, two numbers of interest on my ratio. So the fraction part doesn't always work. So let's take a look then at what we're interested in here. So what do I multiply 5 by to get 25? Because if I know what I multiply 5 by to get 25, then I could take that same number and multiply the 3 by to get my missing number. Well, I think that you can figure out that 5 times 5 is 25, so that means I'm going to go 3 times 5 to give me my answer of 15. Now my second question, again, the same kind of idea, except here what we're doing is I'm missing something over here. So I want to match up, I don't have anything that goes with, so I want to match up the beginning things here. So, and that's not what I wanted, so just hold on a second. And if you notice, that all disappeared on us, didn't it? Because that's just the magic of smart software. Okay, so what I'm after here is and it's not coming, and that's not what I wanted. And so that's all right. Don't worry about it. It just means I get to play a little bit more with my software, which is kind of sucky at times, but that's all right. Plus, I talk to myself too, by the way. Really, I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to you. So let's take a look at this one again. Okay, so what I'm interested in is I'm interested in the relationship between here and here. Because I don't know this one, okay, if I'm going this times a number equals 38, or I could go 38 divided by a number equals this. Now you can see that we have a relationship between the 4 and the 60, right? So we can match. First goes with first, second goes with second. If there was a third, it'd be third goes with third. So what I'm interested in here is how did I go from 60 to 4? Because if I know how I went from 60 to 4, then I can figure out how to go from 38 to the missing unknown. So what I can really look at is 60 divided by 4, I know is 15. So if I divide 60 by 4, then I know that I have the number 15. Okay, so when I do that, and of course it doesn't want to do that, and that's all right too, so I'm going to put 15 here. So that means if I divide 60 by 15, I get 4. So if I take 38 and divide it by 15, I should have my answer. And that's a 5, by the way. And let's take a look. What do we get for an answer? Well, we magically get 2.5. And just to be sure that that was done correctly, let's just check with our calculator. 38 divided by 15 equals 2.533333. Okay, so 2.5. Okay, the last question here with our proportions is I have 4 to an unknown to a 9 equals an unknown to a 20 to a 70. Okay, so first of all, you can see the 4 has to go with something, and I don't know what it goes with. Okay, so 4 times something or divided by something has to equal this unknown. I also then compare the middle number with the middle number in the second ratio, and you can see that, again, I don't know what I have to put with that relationship. Now, the last numbers in this proportion, okay, in the ratio on both sides, I can see a relationship here. So I want to know, what do I do? So if I have 9, what do I have to multiply to get 70? Or if I have 70, what do I have to do to get 9? Okay, so what I can do is that same kind of relationship that we've talked about before. So I'm going to take 70, I'm going to divide it by 9, and I think what I get there is I'm going to get 7.7 repeated. So let's just pull up our calculator again. So 70 divided by 9 equals 7, you can see repeated. Now, the thing is, when I go one way, I'm going to multiply. When I go the other way, I'm going to divide, right? So if I take 9 and multiply it by 7.77, I should get 70. Okay, so when I go in the one direction, I'm going to multiply. When I go in the reverse direction, which I need to do in order to solve the middle term here, I'm going to divide. Okay, so after I find that relationship, okay, so what we're going to do then is to find, let's do this one. So this way is multiplying. I multiply by this. So 4, I'm also going to multiply by 7.7 repeated. And when I do that, I end up with 31.2. Now, if I'm going from the 22 this way to the left, I'm going to divide by 7.7. Okay, and when I divide by 7.7 repeated, I end up with 2.8. Okay, so after you find the relationship between the numbers, one way you would multiply, the other way you would divide, and it would depend on what you know. Okay, so what you're going to be doing tomorrow is obviously solving missing unknowns in proportions, as well as calculating unit rate. And also next time you're in the grocery store and someone's buying groceries, just take a look at the tags, because they do indicate a unit rate for the items there.